it's, I mean, my training has been, we'll talk about it on the No Fix November, but my training, it's fascinating. My discipline, mental discipline on training has increased like 100%.
From removing all the noise, basically.
Yeah, so now it's like, you know, like when you get pummeled on the second set and you go like, oh, that was good. I'm going to do something else now. Now I realize it was me bitching out.
Yeah.
Like, you know, you get flustered
Yeah.
by that set or the first set and you go, no, like Dorian Yates say only one set, I'm going to do only one set. Yeah.
Like, yeah, that's not
And
the Dorian
that's
Yates
not what I
mindset.
said. Yeah, exactly. That's not what I said when I started. And now it's like, no, you do the third set because that's the money set. And instead of looking at it going like, you know, fluster, like it's whacking at my sense of self, on the contrary, I'm like, no, that's the money set, dude.
Yeah.
So you're going to go at it. And I realize, so I've completely disengaged how I feel with performance.
Yeah.
Not in a bad way, not in the sense like I don't know how I feel. I know exactly how I feel, but I can tell the difference with what I need versus what I want. Okay. There's a complete dissociation now between what I need and what I want. I know I need an extra set. I'm like, then you fucking do it. So I have control of myself. It's super interesting.
It's interesting, having known you for a while now, is I see this massive spike, not just in productivity, but like enthusiasm, and if I'm just attached in correlation, you're sending me shit with a lot bigger words now.
Yeah.
More consistently.
I could never read those.
It's maddening.
I could never read those. You know why? Because it's too many words. Like I suck at memorization.
So now I used to
suck at memorization.
You send me something today and I'm like, all right, listen, I kind of get it. And then we get into like 15 different acronyms. And I'm like, I'm lost.
Because I'm in neuroscience and it's like, you know, it's the different parts of the brain. And so they all go in acronym because it's so long.
So sometimes.
But the PCC it's one of the nodes of the default mode network. That's what they say with DMN, default mode network. Yeah. So I say TNN because I like to have TNN and TPN because task negative network versus task positive network, I feel gives you a better sense of a default mode. By the way, we don't even know exactly what it does anyway. As convincing as they sound and how sure they look like they are, fuck no. Anyway, but I'm starting to look which part of the brain actually are involved into this. And so, but the nomenclature itself of all those stuff is absurd. You got the frontal, medial, you know, like the right anterior insulade.
Once they start giving things that involving like the physiology of the brain and this and that, and I'm like,
yes.
Do these things all have to have the dumbest fucking names too? That's all I think when you send me that thing, and I'm like, who named any of this?
Yes.
This is unreadable because
exactly.
of the words.
And by the way, sometimes they refer to one part of the brain two different ways. Yeah. Like they'll say medial on one side where it's on the other side. So frontal, medial stuff. And on the side, they talk about the, you know, posterior. So frontal, but it means the same thing. Yeah. But they'll use different words. A node, what they mean by that is like, for example, is the PCC versus the MFT. And it's actually nodes of, so they're still parts of the brain, but they're not going to say, they use node to say those are the two parts. So there's a lot of words we go like, but it's the same shit.
Yeah.
But no, they just, academics love that shit, man.
I read my way into circles with those a lot. I'm just like,
I think they do it on purpose sometimes.
Yeah.
But you know what I think they do it? Sorry guys, we as usual derailing. You know why I think they do it? Because I've noticed that from the strong fit community. And actually we're going to talk about that today. I try to explain things as simple as I can. Right. There's a difference between simple and simplistic. Right. So, but I run into that issue all the time because I try to simplify things as well. The issue sounds simple. Then people, because I don't use a fancy word, then people go, oh, I get that. But they haven't done the research behind it. David, I'm not talking about you, you're my boy. I'm talking about somebody else and I'm going to explain. But so, because I explain it in simple terms, which by the way takes me so much energy to fully grasp. This is why I can explain simple terms, because I fucking study the shit so hard. And you guys have no idea how complex that shit is. Anyway, but I explain it in simple terms, right? So people go, oh yeah. And so then they come at me based on the words that I used. Not having the background necessary to understand the words that I use.
And just with the way language and communication works, if you're finding a way to take 10,000 complicated words and get it into something that a person can understand with most of the words that they're aware of, of course, there's going to be limitations if you take each term and pull it
but
off.
that's the point, is to simplify it. I had to put limitations. So, for example, two different stuff. I say ego is a bitch. Right, you understand what I mean by ego in that sense. The common sense of the world, which is like you can't learn because your head is too big. Right, but I'm not referring to ego the way Freud described it, because that's more like the seat of the self and everything. So there's a difference between ego in a psychoanalysis type and ego in the way when I say ego is a bitch. But then right away, people are like, but what do you mean? Well, ego, do you mean this? I was like, no, that doesn't fit the sentence anymore. Do I know what ego is? Yes, I read all of Freud by the time I was 19. Guys, I know exactly what the exact definition of ego, but it didn't fit in the sentence I was using because I'm trying to talk to you. But so people take words and then start to put their meaning to those words, and then suddenly I said something I never said before. And so I think academics go with the fancy words for two reasons. First, to cut people that are not from their field out, so they don't have to go into those conversations. And two, to make sure they over-explain, because otherwise this is what people do. They get, it's like a lawyer getting headshot because you put a comma at the wrong place or some shit like that.
I was going to say, it sounds like contract language to me.
Yes,
often,
exactly.
It's like, man, this is fucking airtight.
Right.
I guess.
No, it's not. Not for a good lawyer, right? So now they're going to talk about where do you put the comma instead of, guys, but you understand what I'm talking about. So I had that today with the stuff about tryptophan, and where they're like, well, that's a precursor necessary to create brain serotonin. And then they go into, but carbs can allow you to get the tryptophan to the brain. And I'm like, yes, through insulin. Right, so now you're assuming only carbs can create the insulin response necessary to get the tryptophan to the brain, which is not true. But then they go into super specific stuff. And I'm like, but remember that the conversation is about training. And he's shown that loading on dietary tryptophan kills the fight mode. So I'm like, but you don't want that when you train. So can we talk about that as well? Because all you're doing is taking a chemical reaction and trying to nail me on it. I'm like, I'm aware of the chemical reaction, but that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there are other parts to it that means we can't use it for what it's intended to be used for in that context.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so people rely on words so much now.
It's kind of all we have.
But that's where I disagree.
At this point. Yeah, well, you know what I mean?
Exactly.
From you to them, across 1,000
But that's
miles,
where I disagree.
That's where it's
but that's exactly what we're going to talk about. But that's exactly where I disagree. You do not need words to think. And that's actually what the next few weeks are going to be, is that's what we think. Because that's what technology really gave us and stuff like that, is we communicate through words. But does that mean, is that where we live? And that's what I want to talk about. Because no, we use words to communicate. But see, it's the difference between objective and constraint. It's the same thing. Because we use words to communicate, suddenly it turns into words is communication. Is the only way. Is communication. Word is not communication. 80% of communication is nonverbal.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, I've got some looks that are terrifying.
Exactly. That's when you know you fucked up, right? But that's why text messages are so rough.
Yeah.
So we've been only using words for actually, what is it, like 100,000 years or stuff like that. We don't think through words. That's the problem, is we think, and then words are a way to put it into a materialistic form so that we can communicate. Mm-hmm. But we don't think through words. It doesn't work like that. And that's the problem. We are relying only on words. That changes the debate completely, because then the wrong association with one word fucks up the entire conversation.
So well, let's dive right into it then.
Yeah, okay. Right. So
what the fuck are you talking about?
Right. So what am I talking about? We had that with carbohydrates because we say no carbs. So people lost their mind. And we had one guy in the StrongFit community that started to say, so I said, who's training, you or the carbs? Right. And this is how he changed the conversation into, he said, when I said you, he meant I. So this is what he said that I said. And the way he turned it into would be a complete misstatement. But the problem was, that's not what I said. So what did I say? I say, who's training, you or the carbs? What do I mean by you? Do I mean your muscles? No, I'm a hardware and software guy. By now you should know. So when I say you, I mean everything from in training sympathetic nervous system to muscle to everything, to bones, to exactly,
effort, to everything,
to you.
Yeah.
Versus carbs. Now, so you meant muscles, not what I meant. Then he said carbs means glycogen. And I was like, no. I was like, oh, where is this going? So his argument was, well, I use carbs as depending on who I talk to, because some people I talk to, I basically say carbs and glycogen are the same thing. It's like, first of all, that's wrong. Carbs are not glycogen. It's not the same thing at all. And second of all, just because you make that mistake doesn't mean I made it.
Yeah.
So that's okay for a conversation. But then he started to say, you need to backtrack that statement. Like, but which statement did I?
The words were "walk it back." I'm like, that's not how to start this.
By the way, yes, that is never a good way. So, otherwise, people are going to think you don't have the basic understanding of human physiology.
Yeah.
So I was like, I thought I was very calm, but I was like, you want to use those words? Let's go at it. So what he thought I said by saying who's training you or the carbs is that you don't need glycogen for performance.
Which is not at all what you said.
No, you know what I mean? I'm like, but that's not what I said. Mm-hmm. Why would I say that? And suddenly I'm supposed to walk back that statement, which I would if I actually said that.
Yeah.
But that's not what I said at all. So the problem was he associates carbohydrates and glycogen, therefore, so do I. I'm like, no, because you're wrong. But I don't make that mistake.
There's a lot of suppositions and assumptions that get made. That's what's interesting about communication is you'll say thing A and thing B and thing C are related in this way, and then it comes out that, well, you're forgetting about D, and D is the thing that makes, and it's like, but I didn't say that D sucks. I didn't say that D wasn't necessary. I didn't talk about D.
Yeah,
you know,
it's like the post that I made about individuals and ego. People are, well, that's not how group works. I'm like, I agree, I didn't talk about the group. But see, that's the problem. If people think only with words, then they attach that much to one word. And so every time I say that word, it goes to here, but I'm like, but that's not what I said. You cannot think in words. You have to think in outside of words. That's not how thinking is done. So conceptual thinking is very important because you have to understand the ideas being talked about. Instead of associating what I say with your belief, you should try to understand what I mean by what I say instead of getting attached to specific words. So that guy got pummeled in his head because he saw, I think you don't need glycogen for performance, which by the way was very interesting because after he made the point that when he took away he needs the carbs to train. I was like, but that's my whole point is you don't, well, look, I train, I do rowing intervals that way. I take the carbs, rowing interval go down by 5 seconds, I put the carbs back, rowing interval go back down. So therefore, carbs equal glycogen. I'm like, that's horrible scientific way of doing things. Also, you don't know if if the glycogen was the problem when your rowing went down.
That's the thing that I always want to go back to all the time. Yes. I'm like, you are now taking a thing, a concept or whatever, and you're pulling it into this realm of science where you say glycogen this and carbs are glycogen. Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, did you take a fucking however they test glycogen test?
Yes.
Like, what the fuck are you talking about? How subjective is the thing you're throwing at me?
To make a scientific argument.
To make a scientific argument. It's fucking horseshit.
Exactly. So that's why I got kind of pissed because I was like, but by the way, you just made my point. I said that lower carbs is not necessarily a glycogen thing. It can be a software problem that you need carbs to have a higher level of fight. Yeah. And my whole point was there are ways to do it without the carbs. So in order to get away from that discussion, you associated an idea with words that I say, except the idea has nothing to do with the word that I used.
Yeah.
So you kind of made my point though. But you can't, as you say, you can't throw, this is just bad science. You can't say, because you didn't test anything. So it's a belief system.
If you tell people for real, like I ate something and I've been eating this, adding this in, and I feel like I'm a little fluffier and holding a little more fat over the last few months. So that's why this thing sucks. In your shoes, people would jump all over and say, that's fucking nothing. What is that, just your opinion?
Yeah.
You're drawing these conclusions?
Totally.
And so that's what is always hilarious is they'll take a scientific concept, do no science.
Yes.
Do zero science, not look at it through science at all, and just say, science means that's why I feel this way. And I'm like,
but the problem is that science is true, but it's true in that context. You took that concept and took it out of the context, and now adding it to another context, and now it's not valid anymore.
Yeah.
So you can't just get stuck on words. This is what frustrates me the most, not in the scientific community, just in the world right now, is everything seems to be like a semantic conversation. Like I can't get into a conceptual idea without people sending me article that in their way prove their belief. So, for example, if you tell me carbs is the same thing as glycogen, what you're saying is eating fat will make me fat. You have to understand, to me, it's exactly the same thing.
Yeah.
Because it's an oversimplification of a fucking complex subject.
Yeah.
So eating fats will make me fat. Well, yeah, in some contexts, for example, it could, but you know what I mean? That's not the point.
Yeah.
Right. So ego is a bitch is not referring to Freudian's ego. Carbs are glycogen? No, they are not. But if we're going to go science, then how dare you say to anybody, carb is the same thing as glycogen?
Yeah.
How dare you? That's just completely wrong. So that's been my problem too, is I want to go back because why does it matter to me so much? Because the point is helping people.
Yeah.
Right. And I can't help people if you keep referring to the argument with tryptophan is necessary for brain serotonin. I'm like, yes, but how does tryptophan get there? I'm like, you don't even need carbs that have tryptophan in order to trigger the tryptophan to the brain, right? Because the insulin will push out the other amino acids and the tryptophan will be able to get in. So all you need is tryptophan there in the body, and then the insulin will take over. So now we can get to the idea that, okay, so you need insulin in order to get brain serotonin. Okay, but will carbs create a spike of insulin? Of course they will. Is that the only way to have insulin in the body? Of course it's not. It's a fucking huge machine.
And is it the best way?
Exactly. Is there a price to pay to do it through dietary?
What if it is the most efficient way, except the cost is a little high on the other side?
Exactly. That's exactly my point.
Yeah.
Is there a cost to carbs?
That is not being calculated in any of this right now.
In any of those argumentation. Yeah. By the way, most of that dietary tryptophan goes to a part of the brain that is associated with circadian rhythms, not the rest of the brain.
Yeah.
So does that mean that dietary tryptophan is necessary to, for example, for training? Because that's the argument they make with most of the carbs for training. And or you say, so now tryptophan goes with circadian rhythm, therefore it puts you to sleep, therefore you can have it before you go to bed. So that's why sometimes glucid whacks you and makes you sleep. I'm like, yeah, it makes you sleep because if it fucks up with your circadian rhythm. Is that a good thing? We need to have, so I'm not saying yes or no, I'm saying we need to have that conversation before we tell people to have carbs at night. Because what if there is a cost to it? What if carbs act as a stimulant? So enough to put you to sleep, but then they act as a stimulant, which means they fuck up your sleep. Yeah. So you go to sleep faster. But what if it's not good quality sleep? Then it's a sleeping pill. So you would use tryptophan to go to sleep, but fucking it up at the same time if you use carbs. Is that interesting? That's what the debate should be.
Well, and that's what I see as often as I don't see a debate.
There's not even conversation.
I just see like, you're saying it, I don't like it.
Right.
And that's just, I don't know, and that's not what goes on in the community, in the StrongFit community.
Very rarely.
Very rarely. And usually often, if anything, if it ever looks like that, it really isn't. It is just a communication tone thing.
Exactly.
Also, I was looking at the list of countries. We have like 90 or 100 different countries on there.
That's
so
a problem with English.
Yeah, exactly. And that type of stuff too. So that's not the way it is generally with the people that we're dealing with. But as we start to branch out into other fields, there's definitely, you see more of that.
Yes, because they know less, and knowing less means more belief.
Yeah.
And beliefs are suddenly, we're going to explain why, the sense of self is very much attached to it. So that's what we start to see. But what I want to have is conversation that always relate to the same subject, is helping people. So the cost, the risk-reward ratio has to be included in all conversations. So that's why they'll come and they say, well, see, glucid gets tryptophan, gets into the brain, gets put you to sleep. I'm like, yes, at the expense of what?
Yeah.
Right. What happens if I pound that tryptophan continuously? It has been shown to kill, for example, territorial aggressivity, so the fight mode, stuff like. Is that what we want? By the way, we all talk about brain serotonin like necessarily more is better. I'm like, do you know what it does?
It's also like there's some sort of like a thing relating that to happiness or whatever.
Yes, that upsets me so much. Like, serotonin is a molecule of happiness. I'm like, how dare you? You don't even know what it does.
Yeah.
Every time I have a conversation about serotonin, brain serotonin, I realize people don't know what it does. I'm like, do you understand that it's go toward the circadian rhythms with dietary tryptophan? Do you understand that the level of aggressivity is reduced? And that seems to be a good thing. I'm like, well, it depends when.
Yeah.
Who say I want to lower my aggressivity levels?
Yeah.
It depends when.
Not if I'm
Territorial
training.
aggressivity.
Yeah.
So that's how we're still alive today. You want to fuck with that? How? That, you know what it sounds to me? It sounds to me like a good way to send people back to the factory.
That's what it sounds like to me.
I
think there's a lot of that when you talk about like removing, and even the term aggression isn't really what they mean either. Like the term aggression
territorial
is like
aggression,
an
you
act
defend
out,
yourself.
whereas territorial aggression is not an act of aggression.
Yeah.
If I have to defend my territory, that is not an act of, I'm defending it against an aggressor, you know?
No, plus you need that.
Yeah, and so, but that's the way I always look at this is I was like, you know, while my wife would probably like it if I had less aggression or anger or whatever of those, whatever that tone is, whatever word you try to use for whatever that is, she's going to be glad that there's an abundance of it the day someone tries to break into the fucking house.
No, even though she wants a normal husband around.
Yeah.
Like the idea of lowering the signals, like muting everything is a good idea. Sounds to me as to why we have Xanax and Prozac and all that shit on a daily basis.
Yeah.
Then, of course, on the other side, now you need stimulants because otherwise you can't feel alive.
Because what if something is supposed to piss you off?
Right.
like, no, I'm just going to not do this and then just gradually, slowly neuter myself over the course of the next, every interaction.
Which, you know what, allows you to stay in the factory.
Yeah.
Right. So what if that's the problem with all that stuff is we use it in order to put people into jobs they shouldn't have.
Yeah.
Into situations they should not handle that way. They should not accept. They should. And after that, of course, you need stimulants in order to feel alive, which puts you in flight. So you're either in freeze or flight.
Yeah.
What if the whole idea of, by the way, happiness as a form of deceit? We made a podcast about that. Like you have to look at brain serotonin in those terms as well. What if it turns into that? Because some of it is mood regulation, okay. But that's an argument like someone sent a video today where it's like, well, if you need some sleeping pills because you can't sleep, that can be used. I'm like, okay, but give me a situation where people have started with sleeping pills in order to sleep because they're so stressed or whatever, they can't sleep at all. I'm like, yes, it's necessary for a while. Who came off? What's the percentage of people that came off of it within a 2 years period? Because you can't sleep because your life is shit. What do you think you should do? Take a sleeping pill so you can sleep, fix your life so you can.
Yeah.
Why are we substituting behavior with nutrition? And when I say nutrition, with ingesting substances, either nutrition or drugs, pills and stuff like that. Why are we substituting behavior for that? Because that's what you see. Oh, it's okay to have a sleeping pill because you can't sleep. I'm like, no, you have a problem. You can't sleep. That's what we need to fix.
Yeah.
And you having sleeping pills means you don't need to fix it. If you don't, and remember guys, emotional violence, the higher the emotion, the greater the learning rate. So which means if you lower the emotion, you're like, oh no, at least I can't sleep. Most of the time, that means you won't fix the problem. Everybody's like, oh, well, it's up to them. No, it's not. That's not how this works.
What I find when you talk about the emotional balance thing is as I've had some time to sit with that concept now for a few months, is it turns into this thing where I just know sometimes, or if I get a little frustrated with something I'm trying to pick up on or a skill or anything, is I know when I get a little frustrated, it now clicks and I go, fuck. Like, this is going to get worse before it gets better.
Exactly. You know how I look at it now?
I was like,
it's
so
like I'm not frustrated enough.
I just got to go at it.
Yes.
Now I got to get myself into it to where it really has a piece of me, and now I got to fucking take it back.
And that's how I see now. When I get frustrated, I'm like, I guess I'm not frustrated enough. Otherwise, I would have understood it already. Yeah. So that's literally how I look at it. I'm like, I see myself as there's a threshold past which or under which I cannot learn.
Yeah.
My emotions have to get to a certain level for me to learn. And that threshold maybe is different for all. I don't know. But that's the point, is until I get frustrated past that point, I'm not learning. So I'm like, all right, then get more frustrated so we can get over with.
Yeah.
But if I lower my frustration level or any emotion, then I don't learn. So that's why the No Fix November for me works so well, because it makes me more emotional in that sense, which everything has greater intensity, so I learn faster and better.
So we framed some of the emotional balance stuff and some of the other things, but what we want to get at today is kind of where all of that comes from. About communication, and we're just use words.
Where does it come from?
But what is the root of, we'll call it the self or whatever it is that we're talking about, if it's not just words that are in our brain?
Exactly, and that's very important because words in our brain allow us to think, and that's through philosophy, a lot of stuff, that this is the seat of you. of I, consciousness and all that stuff is right here in the conscious thoughts. And actually, it's not, right? And so I want to talk about that today, and I want to talk about 2 studies that I was reading about. So I don't remember the name because that's the kind of stuff that gets super complicated. So I'm going to talk a little bit about it. The first one, a little bit about the second one, and what I think it means for the sense of self, because we're going to touch into the task negative network, and from there, what does that mean, practical stuff. So the first one is, you can Google it that way, the neural monitoring of visceral inputs rather than attention accounts for first-person perspective in conscious vision. So, well, that's a
Time
simple
magazine
part. That's the simple part. So you guys are in trouble. Yeah. So neural monitoring of this. Okay. So let me read the abstract. Maybe that'll help. Why should a scientist whose aim is to unravel the neural mechanisms of perception consider brain-body interactions seriously? Brain-body interactions have traditionally been associated with emotion, effort, of stress, but not with the cold processes of perception and attention. Here we review recent experimental evidence suggesting a different picture. The neural monitoring of bodily state, and in particular the neural monitoring of the heart, affects visual perception. The impact of spontaneous fluctuations of neural response to heartbeats on visual detection is as large as the impact of explicit manipulation of spatial attention in perceptual tasks.
Hang on one second. So is that saying essentially your ability to perceive things externally is related generally to...
Actually, the seat of self.
Okay.
That's what he's saying. So we propose that the neural monitoring... the neural monitoring of... Sorry, where was I? Oh, yeah. We propose that the neural monitoring of visceral inputs plays a specific role in conscious perception, I, distinct from the role of attention. So they're saying that consciousness, so the idea of I, is different of paying attention to something.
Gotcha.
Like I can pay attention to something, but that does not imply consciousness. Right? They're saying the seat of consciousness is actually done through the monitoring of bodily signals. So it doesn't start here. It comes from the signals coming from the viscera, that's what they're going to explain, going to the brain. Okay. So that me monitoring constantly the feeling that I get from the viscera, which is the enteric nervous system, the gut, and the heart, creates the notion of I. So that I, as a person, does not originate. Who starts the thing does not originate. It's not the brain that starts it, it's your body that starts it. And more specifically, the viscera, which means the organs of the enteric nervous system, the gut, the stomach, all that stuff, and the heart. That's what they're saying there. Conscious perception results from the integration of visual content with first-person perspective. Okay, so perceptual consciousness, neither attention nor high-level cognition. So they explain why. Attention is distinct from consciousness, that's what I just said. In conscious processing, first-person perspective as a core component of conscious experience. So they're saying that the consciousness goes through, for example, I have seen the stimulus. That's how they explain it. The idea that there is an I. And I and me are not the same.
Okay.
Me is you in a bubble. I is you within the world.
Okay.
You say I, because I want this, because you might not. Me suddenly is just about what I do.
Me. Okay.
You know what I mean? So the difference between I and me, because one relates to the world, the other one relates only to myself. Yeah. And that actually will matter in the way the task negative network works, actually, later. Subjective experience is not an illusion. That was very important. So read that, because if I read all this, I could, but look, the reverse hierarchy theory was initially proposed to account for findings in perceptual learning, but fits with experimental findings in the domain of perception and attention, such as the fact that attention proceeds from higher order to lower order visual areas. However, the crucial prediction that conscious percepts are preferentially formed at a global level remain to be validated, which is actually super important. But so that's why you guys want to read it, but I'll at the end I'll try to explain. Accounting for the I in the report, I have seen the stimulus. So that's subject-centered, as they call it. That's very, very important. And it goes on neural response to heartbeat. And then this is where the stuff gets good. They show all the, which is a lot of explaining how they measure it. Those things usually do. The heartbeat evoked response co-varies with perceptual sensitivity, but not decision arousal. neural responses to heartbeat index self-relatedness. So that's why I'm gonna go at. Okay, let me see. Yeah, causation is a problem. But we have shown on the one hand that the sensory representation most likely to give rise to conscious percept have a global integrated content corresponding to high-level visual areas. That will matter, by the way, because focusing on a small thing actually affects the sense of self. I'll talk about this because that means that doing social media on your phone, on your iPad, is not the same. Because the phone is so small, it creates a very focused thing that actually has a direct effect on your sense of self. Whereas if you look at things in a more global way, it affects you less. So that means that you'll get pounded by social media less on your iPad than on your phone.
Really?
Yeah, I tried. I swear it works. So that's something we'll talk about. On the other hand, we have provided evidence that neural responses to heartbeat predict conscious perception by signaling a simple form of self, in particular in a default mode network. Right, so what does that mean? There's another study after I'll go into. Let's talk about what that means.
That seems precarious.
No, that's fine. I like to
You've
live dangerously.
already replaced that screen, right?
I did. No, that was...
Oh, okay.
No, I did actually. Yeah, I did.
I'm just looking up.
Yeah. Man, I never got the money back. Fuck. I just realized that I suck at this. Anyway, so what are they saying? So, and that's very important. They're saying that the viscera, so again, so we know, for example, that to me, this was a revelation. Why? We talked about the gut flora and the importance of the gut flora. You know, we are venom and all that stuff, right? So the idea was you have all the organs of the enteric nervous system, the gut and all that stuff, sends signal to the brain through the dorsal vagus nerve. Very important. So vagus nerve, parasympathetic and everything. So I knew there was a relationship there. What this is saying is that the heart is its own neural entity. It creates a low-level electrical field, and we know through epigenetics it matters a lot, and sends a very specific signals to the brain. So Dr. Porges started early on with this saying the heart doesn't just beat. The time between the heartbeats or stuff like that actually matters a lot. And it seems that there's a language. The way your heart beats is a form of language. It sends signal to the brain through the same thing, like all the vagus nerve going up. That and who does he talk with in the brain? The default, the task negative network, which is the sense of self. So your heart has its own language. It's like your heart is the third brain. We always say the enteric nervous system is the second brain. It's almost like the heart is the third brain. It's not a brain in the sense it doesn't have neurons. So technically you can't say brain. But what I mean by that is it's its own entity. Just like the gut is its own entity, the heart is its own entity that has a language with your sense of self. So it seems that the seat of the sense of consciousness is not in the brain, that's where it gets formulated, but actually the feeling of consciousness starts in the viscera, in the gut and the heart. They both have a language that talks directly with the gut seems to be behavior and the heart seems to be sense of self. The two, behavior and sense of self, creates consciousness. But it starts here and not in the brain. That's what they're saying. And that the interpretation of those signals create who you are.
Well, that's wild.
I never saw the heart as its own neural entity. I knew I had an issue with the heart in my system, the strong fit system. Like I talked about it in the apprenticeship months. I was like, the heart is part of this. I just don't know where it fits. Never in my wildest dreams, I thought I would see that. The heart is his own person. Yeah. And it's a seat of consciousness. It's more than, so it's not an organ. It's literally you. So I guess that's why we say your heart gets crushed when when your girlfriend leaves you or stuff like that.
Which is funny because as you grow up, your
right
intellect and scientific brain just goes like, when it's like, oh, it's bullshit in your heart. It's like, are you fucking stupid? It's
There's nothing in the heart. Yeah, exactly.
What are you talking about?
Right. So what we've been saying for 5,000 years through all cultures, is actually true.
Yeah.
It starts, the heart is the self of your consciousness, the I, or the me. It's not quite the same. Anyway, so I think the enteric nervous system is a seat of behavior. So behavior plus the sense of I, because it's different between attention and consciousness, all those signals mixed together seems to be the base for who you are. But it's the interpretation of those signals that gives your brain the capacity to create your identity. But so it doesn't start here.
The sense of what you are.
Exactly. So the sense
on what's
of
happening.
Right. So that's going back to using words. You use words to define who you are. We all do that, and that's a huge mistake, because that means that who you are is a concept, not a rational thought. We think rational thoughts, our capacity to put words on paper, define who we are. What he says is that that's a materialization of who you are. That's a how. That's not a why. That's a what. Mm-hmm. That's not a why. Your conscious thoughts is not who you are. Actually, it's only the drawing. It's what you put on paper, but that's not where it starts. That extra dimension, like the software that I talk about, right? All that stuff actually is generated through the signals you get from your viscera. That's what this says.
So I think we've communicated that portion of it fairly well.
Okay, so let me go to the second one.
I don't want you to make it crazy yet. I want to get into beyond just what that is. Do you need to go to the second one before we go into what you can do with it?
A little bit.
Because it's all interesting, but I don't fucking know what any of that means for me.
I know, okay, but I need to go through that.
Okay. Let's establish a little more groundwork here.
Yeah, because that goes a bit further. So I established they established that the signal going up is the seat of consciousness. Why? So there's another paper. All that was sent to me by Daniel Murakami, by the way, from the mentoring program. And thank you, because this changed my life. Is a cardiac monitoring function related to the self in both the default network, task negative network, and right anterior insula. So why does the RAI matters? By the way, right anterior insula, so that means on the right part of the brain, it's between the layers of the frontal, whatever. I'm not going to go into this.
He knows it. I don't.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to go there. Google right anterior insula, so that's why I'm excited when I say RAI. Yeah. It's actually extremely important. This is the seat of, especially the right one, not the left one, the right one, is the seat of negative emotions. Your consciousness of pain, we talked a lot about that. Mm-hmm. You know that it monitors blood pressure during exercise.
Really?
Mm-hmm. Isn't that funny, right? The right anterior insula is that it's responsible for so much. That's why they say it's actually, we think it's also part of consciousness. No, but you know, like when you focus on your own heartbeat, can you find your own heartbeat? Try to focus and go into your own heartbeat. Try to listen to your own heartbeat. That's what the right anterior insula does. Is when you try to count your own heartbeats, that's the part of the brain that you use. It's the same part of the brain that relates you to, let me not go too far into this, so negative emotion numbers. So that's why like you have a negative emotion, you feel your heart just broke. Mm-hmm. Because the two parts are actually connected directly. How interesting is that? Yeah. Right, and so that's what they talk about here. So, but it goes even further than that. The self has been proposed to be rooted in a neural monitoring of internal bodily signals and might thus involve interoceptive areas, notably the right anterior insula. So, however, studies on the self consistently show the involvement of the midline default network world. See, they fucking do it all the time. Midline default network. So, default network is a task negative network. Midline is a very specific part of the task negative network, without referring to visceral monitoring. Here we investigate this apparent discrepancy. We previously showed that neural responses to heartbeat in the task negative network encodes two different self dimensions, the agentive I and the introspective me. In the whole brain analysis, data, whatever. Here we confirm and atomically refine this result, whatever. It has been proposed that the self is rooted in a neural monitoring of internal body signal. Here. Right. We confirm the link between the... sorry, I can't read the whole thing, like no one will understand, but I'm trying to get to the important parts. Okay, that's the stuff. Let me get to the conclusion. I'll go faster. So I've read so much more shit than this. This has been a while. So, oh yeah, this is so good. Oh. It's so good, this thing. I get so excited with this. We here show that the amplitude of neural responses to heartbeat co-varies with the self in both the task negative network and the RI. Also, effects are weaker in the RI. This implies that the literature on the self and the task negative network should consider neural responses to heartbeat. Oh, it's so interesting. Anyway, right, so now let me explain what that means. So, the right anterior insulates, that part is very important because that's where we used to put the sense of self. Because again, negative emotion, there's so much associated with that. What they're showing is that the gut and the heart send a signal directly to a part of the brain that is including the right anterior area, but people that don't have it still have a sense of self. So what they're showing is that the gut and the heart talk directly to your task negative network. Why does it matter? Because the task negative network is the sense of self. This is where your social brain is, right? So, just to say, we don't know exactly how this works, but what we used to call a task negative network and the social brain overlap. It's a brain circuitry. It's not a part of the brain. It's different part of the brain that work together. But we know the social brain is exactly that circuitry. So, social brain means how you live in society, social interaction, morals, ethics, sense of self, past and future, because if you look at past and future, you're always in there. Mm-hmm. Like that's how you remember the past and everything. It's always relating to you. So the sense of self, let's call it this way to make it simple, the sense of self. It seems your gut and your heart talk directly to your sense of self. And the heart has the most influence on your sense of self. And it seems that, remember I went back to neural, to the right side with the negative emotions. Yeah. So let me paint a picture of what it seems to be. You talk to your girlfriend, she says, sorry, I'm leaving with your brother, or whatever the fuck it is. You feel your heart is crushed. So at first we think, she left me, sense of self goes down. Everything is in the brain. Actually, that's not the route it seems to be taking. That goes straight to the heart. The heart gets fucked up, beats differently. That signals to the sense of self to change. So negatively and stuff like that. So it seems that negative or positive sense of self relates to how your heart is performing. So bad shit happens, it happens there, it sends a signal to the brain talks to your sense of self, to the heart talks to the sense of self. There's a conversation happening that is not within the brain. That goes to the viscera and up. So it's a feedback loop. Yeah. Sometimes your heart can talk to your brain, sometimes your brain can talk to your heart. But let's say she says something, you go, what? You react a specific way. That part of the brain tells the heart tells the sense of self. Now my sense of self is crushed. Why is your sense of self crushed when your girlfriend leaves you? I will explain when we do the 3 podcasts about the task negative network. For now, let's just talk about the heart in that aspect. So that means that the heart is the language that tells your sense of self to be good or bad. Oversimplification, fuck off. I know.
Wait a minute. So the heart, I thought.
Yeah, exactly.
You're saying the heart doesn't pump blood,
right?
Julian? What
no,
the fuck?
Exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. Right. So that conversation to the heart is directly linked to your introspective me. So that means that the heart could either signal to the brain good sense of self, bad sense of self. This is why everything crashes down. So you can see that in the low versus high vagal tone. Right? Mm-hmm. So low vagal tone is associated more with depression, like I don't want to do anything, everything. High vagal tone is high level of socialization, I like you, stuff like that. So it seemed that we took it always as socialization is here, everything happens well. High vagal tone, everything happens bad. Low vagal tone, it affects your whole body. It actually seems it starts here. The language starts from the heart. And it's the monitoring of that signal that allows you to establish who you are. All right, so it's a feedback loop, right? But you're still going to think, yeah, but it's the way you perceive things that will send the signal to the heart. Okay, but what if you were to do physical activities that target the heart negatively, specifically? So what am I talking about? What if you had stimulants that you put in there all the time that affect the way your heart works? Drugs, caffeine, all forms of stimulants. So what happens when you go trigger a sympathetic nervous system? Not in the brain yet. We know that you start to lose control of the heart rate. So the way the heart performs change in the sympathetic versus parasympathetic, which means that literally carbs have an effect on your sense of self. All stimulants that you take have an effect on your sense of self. What if you were to abuse your heart on a regular basis, not sleeping enough, taking stimulants all day, training too much, doing bad stuff for you? You would have a direct effect on your sense of self that you could not counteract just by talking to yourself about having a high self-esteem.
There's not enough inspiration and memes on the internet.
Exactly. Fortunately, Facebook won't help you with that. Yeah. But that's what it means, though. It means that people that tell you like it's all a mindset. No, there's a physiology to the mindset. You can't just use words to increase your mindset. That's what it means. It means like the physiology of the heart changes your mindset. So that words alone can't do shit. Can they help? It's a feedback loop. But it starts at the heart. Right. So what if you take stimulants all the time, right? What if your heart rate is higher than it should be? Stressed people have a continuously higher rate than people and stuff like that. So then I started to push. I was like, all right, so let's see what we see. If you look in addict clinics, right? A lot of them make, for example, in Sweden, Mia was telling me that, they make people go and walk 40 minutes in the woods by themselves every morning. Right, so there's a number of stuff like that addicts know, clinics know how to do to help with addiction and stuff like that, which I found very interesting. You're always addicted toward the stimulants, even weed and everything. It's still THC. You're actually not addicted the same way you are on stimulants. Anyway, there's an entire thing we'll go over in the Task Negative Network. Anyway, so what if we could train the heart in order to get to the sense of self? So my point was, can we train the heart to give you a better sense of self? That would mean that if I exercise properly, I could raise your vagal tone from low to high and give you a better sense of self. Like we know, because we know how to do that.
So to not throw a fucking arbitrary metric at it now.
Right. Oh, yeah.
If we're saying like, so I just need to train in a way that's going to increase my vagal tone. Is that where we want to start?
Right. It seems to work. So, but I'm going to go further because we know how to do that. There's been studies and I'm going to explain the studies, but I believe we can integrate all that stuff to make it even better. So let's talk about the way we can increase vagal tone because that's the base of the conversation. So this has been shown in study. The best way was you start cardio activity. They always test it on bicycle or stuff like that, right? So we don't know with weights. I'm just going to talk about the study that I read, which was on bicycle, right? They have a baseline, heart rate, whatever it is. Then they're going to raise it to 120. The second they touch 120, they're going to let it come back straight down to the baseline. Why 120? Because that was a cutoff point past which you trigger a sympathetic response. Right, so the key was not to go, because remember, vagal tone is parasympathetic, right? So when you go past 120, you lose the vagus nerve because you switch to sympathetic. So to stay within the vagus side of things, you go 120, let it drop. 120, let it drop. So walk, run, but you never go past 120. 120 is not an objective, please. It was just a way to say not losing the vagus nerve.
Generally, don't go
right,
too fast.
But anyway, because I know people are going to abuse that one and go exactly 120.
Yeah, if you're setting alarms and...
Right, exactly. But anyway, right. So that has been shown to increase the level of the vagal tone, to go from low to high. Right. Now, maybe we can make it better because what are we trying to get there? We're trying to get a massive vagal response, right? We never want to switch to sympathetic. And as this was shown in the Task Negative Network, there are certain things that get you away from that. They were talking about global visualization. Like, for example, having a big...
wide angle of
view is not the same as a narrow one. So I think that's why that addict cleaning, but then walk in the woods. Why? Because in the woods, there's no light on top, so people get less scared, but they look at the trees everywhere. They have a wider view.
Yeah.
Right. We know change of external stimuli targets the Task Negative Network. That means they go into a new area in the woods that force them to pay attention. Pay attention in the ones when you have a more global view of what's around you, right? Because you're not in sympathetic yet. What is sympathetic? The bush moved.
Yeah.
That means the bear is coming. So I'm very narrow focused into looking at one thing because that's where the sympathetic happens. Massive global stuff is still in the parasympathetic where I'm just looking, I'm safe, I'm looking everywhere.
So when you mention this, I want to clarify this. So you say that that narrow scope of view, right? That's in response to something, right? Boom.
Yeah.
And because you're in that state, everything has to be narrowed down because of the state, right?
And that's the task positive network.
Exactly. So what I want to clarify then is, so when you're going to, like you said, the term default, it should be by default, you should maintain a wide visual everything.
Right. That's the point. That's where your sense of self
then
lives.
You remain in that place.
Exactly. And if you start to narrow down your field of vision, you get away from your sense of self. So remember what we're going to use the training for. We're going to use it to rebuild your sense of self positively. Right? So I'm going to make you, I'm going to make you do interval training or consistent under 120, whatever. We'll talk about this at the end. But I need a change of peripheral stimuli. So that means what? I need something new. I need something new where you save that makes you look everywhere instead of a very narrow down. Because change of peripheral stimuli means task negative network. Global visualization means task negative network. So everything that I'm doing is going to put you into a task negative network, right? So if you go too sympathetic, you start to narrow your field of vision. That's task positive. To be in task positive, I have to shut off the task negative.
Okay.
So that's not what I want, right? So to rebuild your task negative network positively, what am I going to do? I'm going to do something that creates a higher vagal tone, but then we can go further. There's more stuff we can do to go that. I want to be in parasympathetic. So that means what? That means nasal breathing. Inhale, exhale through the nose. Always, always, always. Jaw should be relaxed, right? So that you'll see past 120 is when this thing starts to go to shit. For example, facial sweating indicates sympathetic reaction. When you get the mid sweats or whatever, it's your forehead that sweats. So exactly, right? So I can tell you that if your forehead starts sweating, you're going into sympathetic. Right, so that means that, to me, what it means that we can rebuild the sense of self positively, right, to go at depression or anxiety, slightly different, we'll explain later, by rebuilding the heart in a way. That makes sense. How do I rebuild the heart? That's that active recovery. Remember that emotional active recovery day we used to have?
Yep.
Okay, that's what I was doing, except eventually I fucked it up because I had the wrong constraints. Because I took it to performance.
You said it started turning into performance.
Right, and performance is task positive
How
network.
much can I do with this? Like,
exactly.
That's not what this is.
But then I turn it into task positive network, which means I fucked it up completely. The point was to build a heart, not to test it, which is what I fell into that mistake
really,
so many times in my life.
And now when you have kind of the language of using the terms objectives versus constraints, it's very easy to establish these constraints.
So it's,
heartbeat, keep it under 120-ish, don't go.
Right, so it's not a workout.
Yeah.
It's not a workout. It's you rebuilding your sense of self. It is not a workout.
Which means you can't work extra hard at this to get better at it. You can't really throw more of it at the wall. You can't do it for twice as long. Okay.
So 30 minutes, 40 minutes. Again, the point is not performance. The point is not physical. The point is to rebuild your sense of self. So you're going to go into either a steady state cardio under 120. How do you know you're right? You're not sweating from the forehead. You might sweat from the side, but not from the forehead. If this starts to get tingly, start sweating, you know you're going too high. Some days it might be under 100. I don't care. That's the point. You're going to go nasal breathing. Inhale, exhale through the nose, right? To promote the parasympathetic side. You're going to have a global view of things, not narrowed down. So no books, no phone, no nothing. Look around. Not in a scared way. So don't look around and fix onto someone, because then you're back to sympathetic, right? So something new, a new gym, a new environment, facing the bicycle the other way, or all that stuff will actually help you, because it'll force you to pay attention in a global, visual way. Don't let your mind go to someone you want to strangle. The point of that is to focus on me, not me wanting to kill someone. If you start, because that's what I do, if you start to focus on what the people you want to kill, you're going back to task positive network. You're focusing on one thing, you're going back to a sympathetic trigger, and you'll see right away your heart rate raises. So don't let it do that. So it's going to be a lot of introspection, right? Through nasal breathing, through keeping your heart under a specific rate with as much new around you and global visualization as you can do. And if you do that 30, 40 minutes, 3-4 times a week, you can see that you will have directly that well-being feeling being promoted. And we know this because we all have done it through active recovery and all that stuff, except eventually we always fuck it up. But so now we can be far more precise on how to direct that. And I can even direct it toward anxiety or depression, depending, because the anxiety is going to be more about focusing on the movement, whereas sadness, depression will be focusing more on yourself. So we can, basically the idea is to rebuild the heart, therefore rebuild the self. But the way we're going to deal with anxiety, the way we're going to deal with depression is going to be slightly different.
And then we'll explain
on
that theme.
Right. So one will it be almost the same thing, except one will be focusing on making the movement better. So almost toward a task position network, but not quite. Well, the other one will be focusing on you completely.
Yeah, so on that first subject, it's not just doing for the sake of wildly doing, which would be fully task positive.
Yes, exactly.
I have to do this thing. Right. It's doing with attention to the movement, meaning find a muscle.
Right. So learning a new skill, right? Because
feel the muscle.
Yeah. What we'll talk about is that the default mode network, the task activity network, is part of the social brain, but it's also mentalization. Learning is a huge part of that. So learning in a social way. So learning about people, for example, empathy, stuff like that.
Because there's value in learning beyond just survival. That's the thing I think that we're coming to a lot of, right? That is actually learning is important for socialization.
It is, but actually I think learning is survival. We're going to talk about that too. But if you look at what survival means, it is not what the first... Survival is a byproduct of what evolution, life in general, truly is after, which is complexity. Because the only way to survive is to increase complexity. Mm-hmm. If we go only... it's a way of survival, then we would have stayed as a unicellular, we would have stayed as amoebas.
Yeah.
Complexity is the key. Why? Because that's a theory information. We'll go over it again, don't worry. But the key is complexity. Complexity involves learning. So learning is a tool of survival, right? And so learning socially is actually our biggest driver.
And this social aspect is basically the way that as a species we are increasing our complexity.
Exactly.
Because without the social structures that we have,
there would be no expansion.
Stay in this small, at best, family.
Right. So that's where the physical sympathetic reaction is a problem, because then you start killing people.
Yeah.
You can't do that. If there's not enough people, we can't learn from, we can't grow. So it's still a sympathetic reaction, but not quite the physical one. So there's two different ones.
Yeah.
And the sense of self is what allows us to not kill others, because we realize we need them to grow. So there's an entire play there where we'll talk about, I swear. But that's a very important, for me, it was a major moment, because then I start to understand what the necessity neurologically are. And so the learning part, right, will coincide with that social brain, which is your sense of self. So the act of learning is a very, very important part of you building your own sense of self. But there's learning, which is expansion, new, and there's learning which is consolidation, what you already have to make it better. That's usually what they mean by survival of the fittest, is consolidation. But life works through expansion first. So there's two kinds of learning. Learning of expansion, that's toward depression. And learning consolidation, get better at the movement, that's toward anxiety. So that's why we'll talk about it, but that's how we're going to treat anxiety and depression better. Even though from the outside it might look like it's the same movement, the way you're going to address it actually will change how you're going to deal. So if you're more anxious, you'll do one thing. If you're more depressed, you'll do another. And so that's been all the shit I've been working on for the last 2-3 weeks. And I'm getting all the neuroscience on it, exactly what I want to try. So I've been playing with it
everything since you kind of presented it. Has now what you found is a few things to run with, right?
Yep.
And then now it's been everything that you've said to me since seems to line up and really tie back in with everything else, which is what I think you're after, which is a universal truth on the subject.
Yes, exactly.
Which is not like we say, the issue with finding a chemical reaction, you prove that A plus B equals C. No one fucking cares. Like, wonderful.
Yeah.
Tell me what to do with that.
Exactly, because who cares? Because that's the thing, is the theory of everything is what we're after. Is like, what is a sense of self? And the problem that I see is that we associate it with rational thought, with words. Mm-hmm. And that's the danger, and it's not where it is. The sense of self is conceptual.
Yeah.
It comes from a feeling that is not from your brain. Or at least the feedback loop does not involve just your brain. And I think that's extremely important, because that means we can train the sense of self. Because that's the way I look at it. I'm like, fine, sense of self, how do I make it better? The idea that you can use words to do that is by definition then false.
Well, plus how many cases, sorry, I moved it out to an hour out so it doesn't jump our shit.
So we know, yeah, exactly.
But like, and it's interesting, because how many cases would you describe somebody who's having trouble, generally speaking? Would you describe their sense of self as damaged or not fully intact or just weak or whatever it is? Like, that is kind of where the problem or there at least always is a problem there.
And you know who choose that? Psychoanalysis. But how do they do that? With words. Because they tell you that's where it starts in the brain. And that's what basically this shows. That's not, at the very least, it's half the problem and not the full thing. At the very least. And I think it goes way past that.
Because I still think words are important because the average person, that is all they know, right? I mean, or all they.
But if your heart keeps signaling to your task-negative network that it's fucked up, then words can't fix that.
Yeah.
So at the very least, the heart has to be part of the conversation. So it's not enough to talk. You're going to have to exercise specifically.
Yeah.
And that's the key, right? So specific means what? Means again, 30, 40 minutes, nasal breathing, right? Heart rate. Never lose the vagus side. So that means never switch to sympathetic. Something new would be better, but global thing for your view, not narrowed down. There are very specifics to that will help rebuild your sense of self.
So doing a 2-hour session in the gym in which I'm doing 3 or 4 Metcons between 15 and 25 minutes each. And
let's talk about that.
Just fucking looking at this spot on the floor, doing hang power
that means that is destroying over time your sense of self. That would explain the 2-year thing about CrossFit.
You're still stressing your heart and everything beyond that threshold, but not even enough to get yourself the fucking physiological benefits of fat loss and muscle gain on top of it, because you're not going that hard because you're doing too much.
But then I explain why the fat loss sometimes can fuck up, like women that do fitness competition up and down, like, they do 2 hours of fasted cardio and then they starve themselves. Imagine what the heart has to go through.
Yeah.
An hour of fasted cardio, not eating enough. Imagine what your heart goes through with, and then all the shit that they take.
And if you wonder why, then your sense of self, the thoughts running through your brain, the words are going, what the fuck is wrong with you? Because that's what's getting screamed at you from your body, because you're just abused it all fucking day.
And your heart is getting pummeled, and literally it's talking to you, and it seems to be the main voice, which is what I'm reading out of all of this, is that is the brain part of the equation? Yeah, but what if it's not the main voice? What if words can help, but they are not the main voice? What if the heart talks far louder? Because that's what this says, basically. That your heart talks far louder to your sense of self than your words. All right, that would change a lot of things. That means you have to train the heart as much as the mind if you want to feel better about yourself. I mean, that's why the high vagal tone, for example, relates to more socialization, because your sense of self gets built. I didn't say self-esteem, I said sense of self, which is not quite the same. But
though I would guess there's a correlation.
Yes, it's a correlation, but it's not quite the same. But so imagine the importance of that.
To clarify.
Yeah, it is important. Yeah, exactly. But there is a correlation, right? Yeah. So that means that I can build my sense of self. So I've been testing that shit for 2 weeks, and my energy during the day has been absurd, especially that combined with the no fix November, because now I have no stimulants to fuck up my heart. Means I know if I feel kind of sad, I know exactly what to do in training. If I feel anxious, I know exactly what to do. So lifting and cardio is not the same. If I'm beat up, I know my C level of energy, like throughout the day, is absurd. My learning rate is through the roof right now. I thought I was learning fast before. It has nothing to do compared to what I do now. Like the shit I can read now, I don't even know I could understand them. And
if you're watching this podcast or listening to
Ask Tyler, you have no idea.
Yeah, because you'll understand that this is probably like one of the least up to speed I've been on anything coming in the podcast. And that's kind of on purpose, because fortunate part of this gig is if I come in, well, it's not possible. If I come in here knowing as much on this subject as you do, it's just not that useful. It's two people talking over.
By the way, that's the easy one.
Yeah, I ain't getting
like
into that.
This is a simple one. Like that one, so I can read it before I go to bed.
So it's fortunate just for me. I feel very fortunate to be able to sit here. I have to have enough so we can carry a conversation.
Yeah.
But then I get to kind of be taught it in the way that you have to see that so that they get to see it. So that works. But I'm telling you guys that this fucking pace, I'm getting messages from Julian in the mornings where I'm just like, Julian, it's 7 o'clock.
Yeah, I know. And I start early.
Well, no, that's not the problem. Yeah, okay. I'm up at 5, 6 most mornings. But the issue is, I'm like, my brain is not capable of this at all, and I can get close to getting through this, but not at 7 in the morning. But when you talk about your learning rate, I even told my wife the other day, I was like, Julian is on fire at the moment right now. It's like he's got something clicking and it's moving fucking fast.
Yeah, so fast. Like the shit I'm reading right now, sometimes I swear I'm looking at it going like, how the fuck do you integrate that? I'm reading full-blown neuroscience paper going like, yeah, that's a part of the brain does that, I get it, but what about this? And they're like, yeah, we don't know. I'm like, yeah, no shit. I am moving so fast mentally right now. My learning rate is absurd. My energy level is absurd. I'll fix November and all that shit. Like, so that cardio stuff, I'm in full control of my capacities. Like I want to make a podcast about that because people have said like I act differently. They've seen it even through the podcast and stuff like that. And have asked me if I could make a podcast with No Fix November on autism.
I think it's good.
So we're going to make that for sure.
And I think it's a good opportunity to check in because the No Fix November really is kind of an extension. It's a more severe, constrained version of just the nutrition protocol, give or take.
Yes, it is.
It's just more severely constrained.
Right.
And but for you, I think it'll be good to when we get into that next subject about that because also it's an extension of now what it's been like over a year in nutrition. Yeah. To reflect on what we talked about with the autism conversation.
You know what? I can't even. I can't even relate to who I was a year ago. I have never been in control of myself like this. Like, I prize learning over everything. Like I think by now you all know this, and have what I can learn right now and how fast I'm learning it gives. Like I always wanted superpowers, and I found it. Maybe that's always wanted superpowers because I felt it was there, but I just could never access it. Now I can. Now I remove all stimulants and I know how to train. Like we'll talk about this because we're going to make a post this week when we talk about all this. But my training right now is absurd. I've never been in control of myself like that. Like I realized how much I was subservient to the world around me, like not being myself because I was who the world wanted me to be. I've never been able to be the man I want to be like I can now. I'm probably not at my potential for sure, but I have never been in control of myself, of my own decisions like I am right now. I train the way I want, I learn the way I want, I think the way I want. It's almost like I do what I decide to do, at least to a level I've never touched before. So my learning rate is absurd.
I mean, I'm only like 12 days in. I'm still like, I just want fucking coffee before I do a thing that I don't want to do. That's still, god damn it. So Julian's a little more woke at this moment than I am.
No, but you know why? Because of the plus that I see. Because otherwise, like I see chocolate and I'm like, I'll never have any. Because I'm at a stage where I will not go back.
Yeah.
I will never go back. Yeah. Because this is what I want. Who I am right now is who I want to be. So I will never go back. Nothing will ever have control over me like stimulants had. Either caffeine or sugar. I realize now that since for 30 years, I have been a slave of my environment, a slave of stimulants. I will never go back. But when I look at chocolate or stuff and I go, I can't have any, I'm like, fuck. But it's such a trip all day. Like I feel high, but like on speed high instead of, I can't explain it, but the control I have right now, I will never surrender.
Well, that's when we talked about the nutrition is one of the things, the constraints you set in the beginning was I don't have to change my relationship to food.
Yeah.
Which is exactly what this isn't.
Yes.
It's though you're like, I don't really ever want to go back to that. It's okay, well, good. That means you're not
depriving myself. Exactly. Exactly.
You simply.
Exactly.
You enjoy yourself and your current life more than that.
It's way past enjoying.
Yeah.
This is who I am.
Yeah.
The other one was not me, not fully. I will not go back to that. This is literally, so now I'm starting to have almost like a matrix, a conspiracy mindset of this is how society puts you in factories. This is how you don't become yourself. And food and all those stimulants is a major one. I think it's not a coincidence. I'm not saying there's someone in charge of that. Like I think the system has built itself to do that. But look what Adderall, painkillers, all that stuff, those are all numbing agents. Adderall makes you like this. I'm like, yeah, it makes you like this but look at what Adderall does. It makes you focus on one task. Yeah. Guess what? That switches off, that's a task positive network. It switches off the task negative network, which means it directly affects your sense of self. Painkillers, they all attack directly the sense of self. So less sense of self means more compliance. That's how I see it now.
Yeah.
It's a compliance thing. I am the least compliant I've ever been.
Well, I still got that going for me then. I still sit about there.
Me. Yeah, but that's where the strength is.
Yeah.
Now I'm an individual, at least, but my own.
Yeah.
Not just an individual. I'm me. I am in control of my decision far more, not completely ever, but far more than I ever was. So I will never go back. I will never go back. So this is not depriving yourself. It's not.
So when we started this episode, I remember, I don't even remember how you put it. I was like, all right, how do we want to open this? And you're like, oh, well, I'll just go into the whole thing about the default mode and the heart and the signals and the viscera and all this. And I was like, Julian, that's a little fucking heavy.
It is
also, by the way, I got up at 4:00 this morning and flew here.
Right, exactly.
So I was like, whew.
But by the way,
but I will say this for all of what the subject matter is. So the background information behind this, it's all out there. You said the names, look at it. Yeah. It's fucking wordy, but it's there and it lines up and it makes sense. You can take those pieces and put them together.
But that brings a very good.
But do you need that?
Right. So that brings a very good point. Is how you know what I realize people don't read the stuff I put out there, and most of them don't listen to the whole podcast. Mm-hmm. That's what I realized with all those conversations.
The ones that are trying to take
not
all. The ones that want to be argumentative.
Right. No, I think they're argumentative because they didn't listen.
Yeah.
Because either it goes past them or they were busy doing something while listening to the podcast. But instead of going backwards and working, they latch on to certain words, associate the meaning to those words they want instead of the one that I want to associate with, and go with it, because then it challenges their set of their belief system. But that's what you see where people having less attention span and stuff like that. That's the problem, is they latch on to words because some of it they're like, yeah, whatever. So that brings the question, is like, I want to be as practical as I can be, but at the same time, I need to give you this. But I know that most people don't read them.
Yeah.
So I'm like, this is what we see on the podcast. It's that mix of, I come up with a crazy shit, and then we have to do like a practical application of it. So I think the only way out of this is simple. We tell you stuff like the low-level cardio we just tell you about. You go try for 2 weeks.
Yeah, here's my thing. If that hurts you or messes you up, I don't know that there's much I can help you with.
Yeah,
you gotta go somewhere else.
Right.
But like, if you can't do 30 to 45 minutes of just steady state cardio with
4 times a week
and pay attention to yourself.
By the way, it's not cardio. Your heart rate under 120, you're gonna be so bored the first week.
Yeah.
It's like having no caffeine. You're gonna be like, what the fuck do I do on this bicycle? But that's the point. It's gonna remind you of the problem with caffeine, where you're like, oh, cool, I'm reactive now. So now you're there, you're looking around, and suddenly you're gonna have to have a conversation with yourself. Mm-hmm. We're going back to that. Oh, speaking of that, 4 type of what they call neurological disease associated with loss or diminution. No, that's French. Diminution.
What's the fault? Finish it.
Diminutive, like
lowering of the.
Yeah, of the task negative network.
Okay.
You don't say diminution, do you?
Diminishing.
But what's anyway? Whatever. You have
fucking words.
Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
Is the sense of self being destroyed. Mm-hmm. ASD, autism spectrum disorder. You have ADD, ADHD, and you have another one. Those are all the task negative network getting destroyed.
Really?
Yeah, ADHD was part of it, and there's a fucking other one that was so important. Oh, schizophrenia.
Okay, makes
all
sense.
4. How fascinating is that?
Yeah.
Right. They're all neurological issues when they become disruptive. How fascinating is that? And it's all relating to the task negative network, so it all relates to the heart. Oh, so if we train it correctly, we could lower that. We could lower the symptoms. That's what it means.
Crazy.
It's fucking insane.
So get out there, y'all got homework, right?
Okay, so going back to the point is, I think the only way we can have those conversations, if you guys are willing to try the shit we talk about.
Yeah.
So, by the way, it's not cardio, because otherwise you're going to turn it into performance. It's low-level activity.
It's borderline meditation at this point.
Let's call it that. Let's call it active meditation.
Yeah.
Let's call it active meditation.
We got the fucking word for this thing. We got the
active
whole
meditation.
Convoluted bullshit.
Yeah, exactly.
Before.
Yeah, active meditation.
I was trying to create images about a term we didn't have.
Active meditation
active
recovery.
meditation month.
Active meditation months.
Yes.
AM. So TNN plus AM is coming. I like it. Damn. Anyway,
we'll sort that out after.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, that's so good. Exactly. So let's recap. Yep. Low-level active meditation, 30 to 40 minutes, 4 or 5 times a week. All nasal breathing, heart rate under 120. Global visualization is important. Change of peripheral stimuli would be awesome. So something new would be great. So what would that mean? That means that I walk through the woods, get lost for 40 minutes doing nasal breathing and getting like walking, running, making sure I never go into a sympathetic state. So I go to a new gym. I go to a new gym, or I go upstairs to go on the bicycle or whatever. So depending on how I feel, I might do 4 exercises of 10 minutes each, or 1 exercise of 40 minutes, or 2 exercises of 20. Don't care. Mm-hmm. I go no data. I just go by how I feel, and depending on the day, I switch things a little bit, but I explain that. But that's basically what I do. Can be 4 exercises, can be 1. Don't care. But it's not a training session. It's active meditation, and it's the greatest thing ever. Like I can't wait to go. Like I'll go tonight because that way I can recover from my training for tomorrow. So that allows me to train so much harder too. Because now that by the way, I discovered that what makes you quit on that third set is your sense of self, because you get flustered by the first 2. Yeah. So now that my sense of self is stronger, I can go in the third set going like, I don't care, because I'm going to rebuild it. So now I'm like, I'm not in a salvaging mode where I need to keep some self, otherwise it gets pummeled by training. I rebuild it every day. So then the next day I can train harder because I know I'm going to rebuild it on the bicycle later. Oh, it's fascinating, dude. It's been so good. But I can talk about the technical stuff, which will lose 90% of you. So I think there's only way out of all this is you have to try. Yeah. You can't talk about, so in a way, you can't talk about no carbs without having tried. You can't talk about no stimulants without having tried. You can't talk about how to build a sense of self without doing the 2 weeks at least of the active meditation. So it'll be in December will be active meditation month.
I like it.
Because otherwise you just won't get it. Like I think if you can experiment the stuff, you will start to understand what they talk about a lot better. Because those are too complex to read. Like I know. I'm not disagreeing. I'm not disagreeing.
The complexity of that material is the reason that this is probably the least I've contributed on an episode here. I kind of just have to listen, right? Because I needed an intermediary.
But you know what the problem is too is, like, for example, we have a guy like David on the Strong Fit committee who's so smart, right? But for example, like he gets lost on evolutionary biology. Yeah. So because he doesn't understand the implication of the sympathetic nervous system, suddenly some of the conversation was like, I don't get it.
Some of the pieces that he's missing,
So the only way you can do this is if you can pull that with knowledge of the nervous system and knowledge of human behavior, coupled with what that means in an overall stuff, and then there's a But the understanding of human behavior alone. So without psychoanalysis, by the way, you're fucked, because then you won't understand what the sense of self means. But on top of it, you have to integrate almost anthropology in a way, like human behavior, to understand how that fits together. Oh, by the way, computer science, because then multi-agent interaction explains to you exactly how we learn, because that's what computer science is going toward. So if you don't understand like the demon in the machine, what is life, the stuff I talked about in AI, like the objective versus constraint, multi-agent interaction, you will not see the depth to which this goes. Yeah. And that's where people get lost, is they can't integrate 9 different subjects at once.
And I think
I understand why.
If you want to understand, it's got to start with doing and feeling it.
You have to do it, because I can give you the stuff, but it'll take you a year to study the stuff just to get to what I'm talking about today. And that
understanding doesn't apply anything for you. So you're kind of getting the shortcut version to try and apply.
Right. By the way, but that's a very good point. You can't even apply it because you don't have necessarily my knowledge of exercise.
Yeah.
And my experience of coaching for whatever the fuck it is, like 25 years. Yeah. And how good I am at exercise and pushing 8 different sports at a national level and all that stuff. You don't have that either. So maybe if you can understand all that doesn't mean you can put it into practical application, which is where most people get lost. My conversation about active inference, all those top guys, those scientists, they can't apply it to life. If you look, they only apply it to algorithm production of machines. They can't apply it to how do I help humans with that. I can bridge those gaps because I'm good at both.
Yeah.
I'm not as good as that stuff as they are, and I'm not the best at what I do with fitness, but no one can bridge the two together, not like I can. And so that's why they can put it into practical application, because they don't have the experience in movement that I have. So they don't know how to train the heart the way I know works.
Yeah.
So that's also part of it.
I think too, like, so, and I encourage you to try it.
Yes.
I also think if you have questions, not about really any of it, the background on it at this point, you want questions on how you should try it. You have questions on how you can go about applying it.
Yeah.
Certainly ask that within the StrongFit community group. But before you get into all of this extremely wordy material and want to start throwing questions around, try it first. We're not asking you to.
Right.
We're not even asking you to quit anything.
Yes, exactly.
At this point.
I don't know. I want you to do more. Don't change your training at all. I just want you
go.
to add that, and that's the point. Don't change your training.
Yeah.
Because I want you to try that shit 3-4 times a week. Yes, it's going to take you 40 minutes at the gym or outside. Well, don't watch TV.
Yeah.
Watch less TV and go do that. Yeah. And I want you to see the difference in your training and in your everyday life within 2 to 3 weeks. Yeah. It's crazy. If you apply exactly with the constraints we gave, oh my God.
And if it works for you, you don't have to fucking know any of that shit.
No, you don't. No, you don't. Exactly.
That's where I'm at. Like, so what works.
I'm not, this is not a competition. I am not challenging anybody with that stuff. Like I feel sometimes that's, like I have that with business, with movement, with the stuff where it seems to me like a lot of people come at me saying like, let me show you that I'm not below you, kind of thing. You've seen that with business where people come and they always try to prove that they know just as much as I do. And I'm like, cool. Like, and I don't want to say it in a mean way, but I don't care.
But it doesn't go anywhere. It's like that raising your hand saying, I'm smart too. And I'm like, okay.
Yes,
but
that's
we're all
literally...
just, let's just,
so we all
are
pretty,
we working on something or are we talking about
so
it?
we're all pretty,
yeah.
Awesome. I don't care.
It's like if you...
I'm not challenging you, like I'm not saying you're not. I'm saying I don't give a shit, like I'm busy.
Yeah.
Like that's really what I'll tell people. It's like, good, then you go do it.
Yeah.
You do a podcast so that way I can watch yours.
Yeah.
Like, I don't care. We're all pretty. I'm cool. I'm not in it to prove that I'm smarter than you. I'm not in it to do anything else, but hey, cool shit. I think I can help people. There it is.
Yeah.
Go try. But nowhere is it let me prove to you that I am smarter, because that would mean that I care about you. And I'm sorry, but I'm busy.
And if that's not what, and if that's not what it is, but that's what ends up becoming what it always ends up
in those conversations. Yes,
it's like then you get tired of doing that thing.
Right. That's a problem.
And that takes away. It does take away from your ability to teach.
Right. You have to understand is when you say I have to walk back some statement, like you just cost me energy and focus from the stuff that I can use to help others.
Yeah.
So before, I don't mind these conversations,
yeah.
But before you say stuff like you need to walk back that statement, you better be right.
Yeah.
Let's have that as a rule, because if you're not right, you're going to be we're going to talk about you on this podcast. Like, just be fucking sure you're right. Like, the reason I don't like it is, and then that's the same thing where people think I'm in competition with them, is like, I'm sorry, but who the fuck are you to think I'm competing with you? That means you think there's a competition between us. And it's not that I don't care, because I care about everyone, but I'm sorry, dude, but like, I'm busy.
There's not a thing that Julian and I have ever spoken about ever that says, I just want to make sure that people know that I'm smarter than them. It never comes up. Like what the thing is about doing and teaching and pushing the system and all of those things. And nowhere in any of that is there fucking time for that bullshit. And there's hardly even time to convince people who don't want to be convinced.
Exactly. Like I don't even have to. Yeah, we move on, because there is no, and it's going to sound bad if I say like that, but there is no other human being that exists in my consciousness. Does that make sense? Yeah. Like I live in a world of conceptual ideas. Like that's what Plato referred to. Let me explain it like this. Plato had the whole thing where he said there's a dimension where ideas live. It's been around for a very long time. I think there's even a name for it. But so the idea, like that's where mathematics live. Mm-hmm. Or at least it's our way there. It's our the bridge that we use in order to, for that dimension where ideas live.
Purely conceptual.
Exactly. But for him, there's a dimension where that purely conceptual ideas live. Like there's an actual physical dimension, which is the dimension of the software.
Yeah.
So there seems to be. We're not going to go into extra dimensions,
yeah.
but
if you get further into it, it's like that. That is information. As it
it's
like
somewhere,
mathematics itself is an informational truth.
Yes, exactly.
Where does that sit?
There's a great mathematician was actually talking about that, saying like it sits somewhere. We just don't ask me where.
Yeah.
We just know it sits somewhere. And there's been numerous books about what Plato talked about with that dimension. Right. This is where, in a way, so it's very interesting because Ramanujan. You know, the greatest mathematician probably that lived, the genius that they talked about. Remember Good Will Hunting?
Yes.
Robin Williams sitting across, like he talks about Ramanujan. Google Ramanujan. He's a genius of prime numbers. He came up with over 3,000. So he had a high school books of mathematics. Out of that, he came up with 3,000 theorems that he sent to, I think it was Oxford, to someone in England who brought him over. We're talking 19th century, mid-19th century. Out of those 3,000, I think less than 100 got proven wrong or something like that. But at the time, half of them had already been done. You just went like this. And the other half baffles people to this day. They're still trying to prove some of the shit he said. He died at 33, 34. Like that, yeah. He was one of the greatest genius we ever had. I think they made a movie on him. And but the thing was, he didn't write down the stuff. He came up with the answers, saying like he got it from his family's Hindu goddess.
Yeah.
So his idea was he was dipping directly from the Hindu goddess. So in a Platonian way, it would be like he was taking that knowledge directly from the world of ideas.
From the space.
From the space of ideas. This is where my brain goes. I live almost in that idea, in that world. So, sorry, but none of you live there. So, no, but like maybe some of you do, but not in the, when I tap into it, it's me and the world of ideas. So in that sense, it's like, there is no part of me that compares myself with other human being ever. Especially when it comes to psychological, when it comes to lifting, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
But when it comes to thinking, I do not compare myself to anyone because that is not how my brain works. I only think in conceptual ideas. So I just tap into that dimension. That's what my brain does. It's a gate to that dimension. So in that sense, when it comes to that stuff, none of you exist. It is not a competition. I am not trying to get better than anyone. Yeah. So when you come with words like that, where I'm like, well, what do you mean walk back a step or whatever? You're taking time away for me to go into that dimension. Like I have no desire, interest of proving myself smarter than anybody. I get pissed when people question me. Ask questions always. Question me that annoys me, but that's human stuff. But you have to understand, none of you exist in that world. So I am not trying to be smarter than anybody. Yeah. I'm just trying to put stuff out that I feel can help.
Yeah. And it's important too. We want you to talk to us about it.
Oh, totally.
Totally try it first.
Okay, but just try it first and don't tell me to walk back my statement unless you're right. If you're going to tell me that, just be fucking right.
Yeah.
Let's make that as a rule.
Yep.
Just double check because you better be right. Right. And yes, and I do believe like a lot of those conversations can only be done if you have tried the stuff. Like if you do the no fix November, because if you say you don't have carbs, but then you pump the caffeine or the sugar, it doesn't work like that anymore. Like you have to truly like the results. Have you seen the results? We're going to talk about this in the post, but the results of no fix November, oh, fuck me.
Yeah. It's crazy. I can't wait to we'll
go over that.
You'll probably actually have seen that by now.
Yes. Most likely you'll have seen that by now.
Due to Strong Fit time travel.
Yeah, exactly. But we're gonna talk about it. But the results have been, it's been very interesting. Why? Because they went full blast.
Yeah.
That's the thing is you can't just have people say, I just have one coffee instead of. It doesn't. That's not how it works.
No, because I only had one coffee.
It doesn't
maybe
work.
Two.
Yeah.
I had two coffees maybe two times a week, one every other day, and holy shit, sleep, everything. So we'll get into that.
The difference is so major. Yeah.
But that's the thing. Dip your feet in the water at least, or at least fucking wade out.
This one is not that bad.
Yeah.
It's 3-4 times, 5 times a week. All we ask you is 40 minutes.
Now, if we're being honest, I gave Julian the same response when he told me this because I thought it was cardio.
No.
So Julian basically worded it in a way where my takeaway was he wants me to do cardio for 45 minutes, 3 times a week. And he said, I think we're going to do it for a month. And I said, I think you're fucking crazy.
Yeah, I know. I don't want to do it. Yeah.
I don't want to do it, and that means it's probably a good idea. Because the November thing seemed to be, because my first thing with November was no.
Yeah.
I was like, it's going to suck.
Yeah.
Not me doing it. It's going to suck that now I got to talk on a podcast while I have just chose not to do the thing. Yes. So instead I did the thing.
Exactly.
And it's been very, very interesting. So we'll go
It'll
into
be the same for active meditation. Yeah, but again, it's that active meditation. It's not a workout. Don't take it as such.
So, but I think that's got us about wrapped up. Again, all this stuff, Strong Fit Community on Facebook, keeps growing. People keep talking on there. It's there's familiar faces now. You start to understand who the people are, and then it's such a much better.
It's great.
Better dialogue because you understand where the person's coming from now, because you've had conversations.
It took us 2 years. Yeah, plus it took us 2 years to build that. I think there's a lot of smart people now that start to talk openly because they realize the conversation will not be about bashing.
Yeah.
And I think that took us 2 years to build the confidence and the trust that of people where they can have conversation and ask stuff, and that they will be allowed to talk and will defend that right. And that there will be no bashing in return and no negative.
Yeah.
So that it's a non-emotional conversation, which I feel is a very needed thing, where we can have conversations. And as long as, the key with conversation is, as long as you ask a question and not question people, usually it's fine.
Yeah.
It's like, what about this? Well, this is what I think. People with a wrong tone, that's why I'm talking to people saying, don't say it like that. Because it's not so much with me as it gives everybody else reading your post either the latitude to say it aggressively, or they can't respond because they don't want to get into an argument. It creates a negative feeling that I don't like. Yeah. So that's why I might answer a specific way.
Once there's one black mark on a thing,
exactly.
You kind of remove the constructive dialogue
right.
from it. And then you got to wait to engage it,
right.
see what comes of it,
and so
and everybody
I think
else runs away.
Our job is to monitor that people are always comfortable talking more.
This is the last thing I ever want in that group is for somebody to share something and have someone to be like, oh, geez.
Well, we had that, the post from the guy.
Bit, yeah.
And then that's why I answered right away, because he was like, you guys are using the Strong Fit community to basically bitch about No Fix November, which is just as bad as using caffeine. I was like, no, dude, you can't say that.
It also lets me know that you haven't seen the podcast or heard us talk about it, because the whole thing was about ingesting and the enteric nervous system and all those things too.
And plus, like, why are you so angry? I know who that is. So anger issues is not is something already. Yeah. But I'm like, don't say it like that, man. That's
turn off your notifications for the thing.
And plus, who forces you to read it? Yeah. That's the part I don't get. Like, what harm does it do you that other people talk about their thing? Why does it annoy you that other people talk about their experience to No Fix November? That should tell you something about yourself. Or if you're on No Fix November, what carbs you exactly.
Yes. So the community's great. Get on there. We've got StrongFit1 on Instagram, Tyler Fonsone on Instagram, Rare Barracuda, UK32. We have, what else do we have? We've got, that's the free stuff.
Julian's Corner.
Julian'sCorner.com.
I have to start posting
the stuff that we charge money for, some of it's there. Some of it's on StrongFit.com, StrongFitEquipment.com. So a quick rundown, because I never do, of what the online programs that we have are. Right now, we have the auto-regulation training. It's training.strongfit.com. Yeah. There we have, basically, you can go in and you can pick a coach that's kind of your guide. You'll get one-on-one calls with them. They can kind of structure it with you. Those aren't, it's basically you're with a we're with a small group, and you kind of get an individual to check in with you in your videos. And to check in and talk with you once a month, as well as the calls with you and with Richard. We also have the new auto-regulation nutrition group, which is closed, opening up again in a couple months, probably a month from the time you're seeing this. Yeah. That's nutrition, that one's hidden, but go to strongfit.com, it'll be there when it's ready.
Yeah, because we had people showing up on the 15th of October, and then that kind of
shifts it
that
around.
Was too long, because then they haven't done the first call, and that just messed everybody.
But those are, and then we have also the mentoring program. All those things you can find at strongfit.com also. So those are kind of the online services. If you want to get to us without having to get all the way to us, that's a good place to start. So, but yeah, that's got us wrapped up. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next week. Yeah. Or in a couple of days.
Probably in a couple of days at this rate. Most likely.
Bye, everybody. We'll see you next week.